Hello, everybody. I'm really honored today that I share a longer YouTube video with you guys. I'm joined today by my dear colleague, Alastair Mason. He's the Director of Strategic Growth in EMEA. He is in the industry for a very long time, but he will tell you all that yourself. What we actually thought of doing and sharing really on your YouTube channel is a little bit of a in-depth, longer video. If you work in global mobility, if you work for larger or smaller companies and want to know what are the current trends, why technology is important, what potentially also Envoy Global can offer to you as a company, then this is definitely something to watch. I look extremely forward to spend the next, well, probably minutes, but it's going to be more than minutes with Alastair. So welcome, Alastair, to our YouTube thing here. And and maybe just quickly introduce yourself, and then we're going to start a little bit. So over to you, Alastair.
Sure. Thanks for having me, Andreas. So my name is Alastair Mason. I have been in immigration since 2013, I think it was. I live and work in London, so my focus for the majority of my career has been on UK inbound. I'm regulated to advise clients on that area. But over the years, I've worked in all manner of elements of immigration, from the technology through to outbound work as well. And now I find myself today working across EMEA and beyond as well.
Okay. And tell me, if you now look back into your career, what is a lesson, or from your journey you basically also still use today to guide you maybe through today?
I was going to say logic, but sometimes not necessarily logic, sometimes the illogical as well. So logic and perspective, I guess, is the best way of putting it. So when I'm looking at how to advise clients, I'm looking at the rules, but I'm also looking at what the government is trying to achieve by implementing those rules. So a client will come to me and say, well, the rules say this, so I can follow that. Yeah, but the government just haven't written the rule how they intended to write it. And if you follow it as they've written it, you might come unstuck or you'll face a delay. So my advice is interpret it how you know they want it to run, and then act accordingly. So yeah, logic and perspective has been really important.
That's very cool. So tell me, Director of Strategic Growth EMEA, what do you do every day? What's your role, and what excites you? What gets you out of bed in the morning?
At the moment, a 4-month-old, but
yeah, okay, fine.
So my role is some would say that it's sales, but I'd like to think it's broader than that, and it's not just sales, but it's growing our practices and bringing them together across the globe, and in particular in EMEA and APAC to a degree. So many of the clients that we work with, they might use us in one jurisdiction but not in others because they're decentralized businesses. How do we bring them together for their benefit so they have one joined up operation, or decentralized operations but still benefiting from our multi-jurisdictional approach? And then looking at everything from how we're servicing current clients. Is it efficient? Are we billing them in a flexible way that they desire? Right through to working on RFPs and tender processes as well. So it is a sales role to a degree, but it's everything that goes around that. And I tread the line between that world and the technical advisory world very finely. So I flip into either side quite often.
So is it the consulting part which really excites you? Because it's
yeah, it does. I like the consulting part. So I still do some private client work. I guess what excites me the most is the creativity element of it. Not just following a process, but actually building the process in the first place. So I really like that.
I understand that, and I think, I fully understand why that is exciting. That makes sense. So tell me, and then we ended maybe with your role and your job, but in 3 or 5 years, what do you think your role will be, looking at AI and certainly technology developments?
Yeah, so I think this has already happened, but I think it'll just gather pace with the adoption of AI. But when I started my career as a case manager, a lot of the process that I was doing was the administratively complex filling 104-page application forms by hand, and then you had to email a team at the UK authorities and ask, "Can I have permission to submit my application using priority today?" And they would say yes. You had to write a reference number on it. You post it off, etc., etc. And there was the legal advisory aspect to it, but a lot of it was process that businesses just didn't understand. And fast forward 12, 13 years later, and in the UK, UK perspective here has been my predominantly area of focus. You can apply for a visa on a mobile phone app. You can take a selfie. I cannot add much benefit to that process, but what I can advise on is, well, it's so easy to get a visa. How do you gatekeep the people coming into the UK? And when you see somebody walking through the office and they're on a visitor visa and they should have a work visa, how do you manage that? So my role is changing from, and I think the industry is changing from the administrative elements, where 10 years ago people might come to you not for your legal expertise, but also because you knew which form to print and which one to fill out, through to actually the more consultative process of advising clients and compliance, and the actual admin processes fall back a bit.
I always said to my consultants, and also in here, we always had to, on this pyramid of service level, you need to get to the advisory, or ideally even to the trusted advisor, right? That's where we really need to get to, or need to be, because the rest is probably taken over at some stage by, well, either outsourcing or these days, obviously, AI. So I think the trusted advisory kind of role is what we need to strive for. But yeah, okay, cool. So now moving to Envoy Global. So obviously we have a similar history. Both of our companies were acquired by Envoy Global. So tell me a little bit about our typical corporate clients. Who are our corporate clients who are happy with Envoy Global? Who would that be?
Anybody and everybody within society that touches an immigrant workforce. So typically, they would be customers that have a focus on compliance, reputational implications of non-compliance within certain sectors can be disastrous. So finance, legal, tech are a few that come to mind. But then also, I would say industries that really, not that certain industries don't care for their employees, but industries that place a large focus on looking after that employee journey. So we work with certain customers where the salaries that they pay may not be huge, they may not be heavily regulated, but they really care about that onboarding and hiring process. It's very competitive, and they use us because that's a competitive edge that they can have over their competitors. They can say, well, your hand will be held throughout the entire process, you won't struggle through the visa process, you'll be supported from a tax perspective, etc. So it's a huge range of companies. Historically, tech and finance in Europe were really big. We had an explosion in the care sector in the last few years, although that's been shut down slightly. But anything and everything from television studios through to restaurants, you name it. At some point, I'm sure I'll have crossed paths.
Size obviously typical mid-size to smaller, right? So not the top 50 companies in the world, right? I mean, not the super huge ones.
Yeah, exactly. We've worked with some very large companies over the years. So we took on a project for a particularly large client at short notice, moving hundreds of people for them. But in general, it's the medium to mid-sized where the moves are a person, not a statistic. It's somebody behind it going through a really sort of disruptive, often and life-changing event of moving from one country to another.
So when we talk about these clients, what is the, I can imagine now, what is the most common misconception you face in your job when it comes to immigration from the view of the client? So what is their most common misconception?
Immigration in many jurisdictions, it varies its ownership varies from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. So in Germany, I feel it sits a lot closer to relocation. So you get the process tied up a lot there. Whereas in the UK, it sits quite separate from that, probably down to the significant government fees. It gets split out. And so there are these broader principles, but beyond that, people don't really know where immigration sits. Is it HR? Is it legal? Is it somewhere else? Is it operations? So sometimes it gets bundled with legal, straddling HR. And the biggest misconception is that we are like any other legal service. So typically, clients will come to us. I will have a conversation with them to learn a bit about them, and they will finish the call by saying, what's the bill for this? Because they're so accustomed to legal services starting the clock as soon as the phone rings. Whereas our industry is very much fixed fee, volume, giving the client certainty over costs for the year ahead. And I think that's probably certainly in the mid and small sized clients, that's their only exposure to legal services would have been employment or property or commercial law, where it is hourly billing. For us, it's very different. And our first interaction is usually me instilling some faith that the clock isn't ticking and the bill is fixed. So, yeah, I think that's
okay.
That's quite common.
Okay. And what can a company then do better when working with an immigration provider? So what is the benefits for the company?
Oh, good question. I mean, the benefits, what can they do better? There's various things, but one thing I would say is to trust your provider. And if you can't put this amount of trust in them, then there's questions over whether you should be working them in the first place. But the trust, for example, I had a client that I looked after for many years, and I loved working with them because in the UK at the time, I think it was about £250 to expedite a work visa application. And it was a large account, a few hundred moves a year. And they said to me, look, we trust you. You're spending our money. We trust you. Expedite the application if you think it needs to be expedited to get the decision for the start date involved, or if the individual would benefit dramatically from it. Maybe they've got a family wedding coming up and this sort of thing. And if you get pushback, come to us, but only come to us during exceptional circumstances. And that level of trust, it empowered me to work closely with the client. And it also saved them a huge amount of time. I wasn't coming back and forth. And actually, sometimes that back and forth is it destroys the idea of expediting it anyway, because by the time you've got the approval, the opportunity's gone. So I think, yeah, it's hard to do. I appreciate that there's internal policies and processes that need to be gone through, but where you can place that level of trust in a provider, both sides will reap the benefit. You should view your provider as an extension of your team, not an independent service provider. Really, it should be like your one homogeneous unit.
And in my experience, also when the client really trusts your team, it also motivates the team to really excel even more. Because I mean, it's like with any other human interaction, right? Somebody places trust in you, you actually try to not disappoint. While if you obviously micromanage in the sense of, okay, that approval, that it becomes very procedural instead of, so I think that's very important. Even from a motivational point of view, the trust would be a good thing. Yeah,
100%.
So if you, elevator pitch or whatever, but if you have 60 seconds, why corporates should sign on with Envoy Global? What's the big difference? Why would they go with us? Tell me.
So what I like about Envoy, that so far that I've learned in our relatively brief time working together, is that we are a global provider, but it's a collection of local providers working together over a global setting. And that sounds a bit cliche, but what I'd like to, a good example is if you have a medium-sized UK company, they will talk to the UK team. It will be like they're working with a UK entity. Behind the scenes, there's the infrastructure there that if they do expand into South Africa and they want to set up an office, then hey, we have a colleague there and we can assist with that immediately. But it's not this global conglomerate that everything has to be filtered through a head office and then it trickles down. It's a collection of smaller, locally nuanced service providers that are joined up behind the scenes, and that I really, really like that, because I think that's the best service provision is local to local, not global to local, which is what some companies get wrong. Alongside that, again, a UK specific idea is that service provision is central to what we do, but there's the mechanics of immigration are changing. And in the UK, we have a very complex fee structure with the government. So for many of our clients, some of them look at us as a great service provider and a pretty useful bank as well, because we are paying all of these fees on behalf of our clients. We're reconciling, we're pushing out reports to them. And I even had one customer inquiring with us and said, hey, we're actually pretty happy managing immigration internally. We're just really not happy with the payment process. Could you just do that? And the immigration service would be an added bonus. So I think it's, not just looking at it as the consultation element of visas and immigration, but all the mechanics that go behind it with tracking and payments and document retention and everything else as well.
Okay. And in your experience now, what is one thing the clients didn't know they needed and now they have it and they love it? They can't live without it. Is there anything which you get in your feedback talk which stands out, what the clients mention?
I mean, it's a little bit of an older one, but secure document sharing ability, that's really come to the fore in the last 3 years. I join calls with clients, usually the HR department, and new prospective clients. And we've shown that we've got secure document transfer between us, their employees, and their HR team. And it's not something they've had historically. And the legal team, the data protection specialists at their business have been sort of licking their lips at the sight of some means of sharing bank statements, pay slips, etc., securely. Not outside their internal mechanisms that are only available internally for like HR and payroll, yes, but to be able to share it externally, which they don't often have the infrastructure for because they don't need it, frankly. So yeah, that's been something that people haven't necessarily thought of, and when they come to us and they see it, it's a really attractive proposition.
Cool. All right. And then the other one I always wondered, and that's actually from our own experience. So when we tried here in South Africa to get larger accounts, we obviously, in RFPs and sometimes in presentations, and the competition was EY, Pricewaterhouse, or some other local providers, Fragerman, et cetera. We always came very much from the human side, right? The consulting, the advisory side, because we didn't have fantastic tech, because tech costs money and you need to maintain it, etc. And obviously the larger players, they really come a lot through the tech side, right? Yeah. So in your experiences, I mean, I guess it depends on the clients, but what does clients want? Do they really want the tech? Do they really want the human side? Do they want both? Or do they say they want both, but they actually just want the tech? Because, I mean, let's be fair, I mean, in my limited experience, obviously, I think the tech is really, really important. And it might be even more important overseas than in South Africa, but it's already important here. Yeah. But anyway, I asked the question. Sorry, don't want to answer it.
It's good point. I think, like, in a word, it's both. I think there's been a lot of tech in the market, and I call it tech for tech's sake. Like it's just, it doesn't actually solve anything. It doesn't do. It doesn't do anything that the client can't already do well, but it's a great sales pitch, right? So AI seems to be the buzzword, and if you say you've got AI, then everyone sort of gets excited about it. What does it actually do? I think it's become increasingly important for tracking, like who's instructing your case, and the ability to audit immigration files, not just from a compliance with government's perspective, but the ability to audit who instructed this file, who authorized it. And over email, that becomes muddy very quickly with larger programs in particular. But I hasten to add that I don't think, and this is why my answer was both, I don't think it's yet replaced, thankfully, us, because no matter how many times we have a very robust instruction process where the requests are raised through our technology and it's tracked through there and emails are automatically sent to the assignee, etc., there is always a case once a month where a client will call up and say, somebody's stuck in XYZ, we need you to call them now. And the tech can't do that. The tech can't judge the urgency of the situation or read the emotion in the call. I say can't do that yet, but so my belief is that both sit side to side. I guess you could best look at it as tech is the enabler for what we do, and what we do is the actual sort of reading the situation and acting upon it accordingly.
It's we're interesting times. I think the tech will become more and more important, unfortunately. I mean, I think humans like to buy from humans and deal with humans, but the truth is that, I mean, you just said, I mean, AI can't really read the emotions. Well, it can, right? I mean, these days already, and we don't even know what they're developing somewhere behind closed doors, right? I mean, we only see what we see. But anyways, it's interesting. So tell me, so when we talk about Envoy Global, what's one piece of technology they have built or we have built and adopted, which really truly changed the game for our clients? What do clients really like? I mean, you mentioned something about the government fees, but I'm not quite sure if that was it. But yeah, what's one piece of the technology?
So the spend management is integrated into the technology, which I think is very important. I know I've sort of harked on about this, but UK visa fees for a single person for 5 years, a work visa can be up to £15,000 in government fees alone. And you times that by a program of 100 people, or you times it by the likes of the Tartars of this world that are bringing 6,000 people to the UK every year, and you have the GDP of some small countries. So being able to track that and report upon it is really important, and the technology we have does that. A new feature that's currently being worked on looks at the reporting of that and making the reporting streamlined, because it's all very well having all this data at your fingertips, but if you can't get it in a format that's easy to digest and learn about your program, then it becomes somewhat irrelevant. So I think that's two things that the tech is doing really well is spend management, and spend management in a format that's easy to comprehend for clients, not just a sort of a huge spreadsheet with many cells.
Okay, cool. So I want to just we're nearly at the end, by the way. I think you're doing fantastic. But the one or two things I wanted to still ask you. You mentioned the local expertise, and obviously, you know, when you talk about this big volume into the UK, we here in South Africa can always laugh, because I mean, if we get like a 10th of that would be a decent client, right? But when we talk about like local expertise, because you said that's our strength, right? Why does it matter? Why is that important?
I think it's well, I mean, very simply, if you are being sold, if you were cold called in your personal life and you were sold, well, not necessarily cold called, but you were called by your bank, where do you want your bank's call center to be? You want it to be in your home country. Same thing, because they understand that you can make a joke with them perhaps about how bad the rugby was last week, or they will be fluent in your mother tongue. They'll understand the cultural nuances. They'll be in the same time zone as you. All of these things that I always try and look at similarities in other industries. Same in our industry. I want to talk to somebody that I resonate with on a personal level, in a time zone that's convenient to me, and I think we get that when we have that local to local. When it becomes global to local, we lose it. It's not to say that, you know, it doesn't mean we can't work together across borders like we are today, but in terms of service delivery, I think it's really important to have that local nuance.
And I also think, obviously, I mean, you already mentioned it. It's one thing to have clear laws, and I think the UK is very transparent, and you can read up a lot, etc. But even in the UK, despite all the transparency, you still have a practical side how it's interpreted, how it's used. Right now in Africa, we sometimes struggle really to put the laws online, and then not to mention that the discretion is obviously completely different or very different. And then the local expertise really matters, right? Because actually the practical side looks really different. It's not just Africa. I mean, we hear the same from our colleagues in other countries of the world, but I think that's where the local expertise I think really is important. But also from a client satisfaction point of view, as you said, the interconnection, the language, the cultural way to communicate, I think is really important. Cool. Last question, really. So let's look into the future, right? So we talk now a lot about the past and the present, and now we look into the future. So what is a trend maybe our clients, our corporate clients should watch out for in global mobility in the next, I don't know, 3 or 4 years? One trend or two trends or whatever. I mean, what would be your answer?
I think we sort of touched on this a little bit already, but the principle of gatekeeping and compliance. This is something I talked about with our business visa team, the short-term travel team. I feel like immigration historically is like movement of people for, I call it, significant periods of time for work, study, family reasons. And short-term travelers, those business travelers or tourists moving around the world for weeks, maximum really at a time. And I feel those two worlds are converging, and they're converging, and maybe immigration is moving into that world a little bit because of a simplification of processes. It's easier for individuals to get a visa for a country more than ever in terms of the process that you go through. And so, hey, I can go and get my ESTA. Doesn't mean I have the right to work in the US, but it's very easy for me to get it. So as a business, how do you gatekeep that process, and how do you make sure that, yes, it may be easy for people to get it, but you need to make sure they're getting it for the purpose for which they intend to come to that country.
I think that's very interesting, because we also in South Africa are going to get ETA, electronic travel authorization, in September, and they're starting small and they're rolling it out. So I can see exactly what you said. Now suddenly they come into the country, but that doesn't mean they can work or do the actions they do, right? Because coming to the country and having the right visa is a different thing. And how do businesses really ensure that? I think that's an interesting one. We will also face that in the future, I think.
Yeah, I was talking to our business visa team, and they were telling me how large organizations are outsourcing the ESTA process for the US. Incredibly simple to apply for, but this goes back to that point of, it's not the administration element that they're outsourcing to us, they're outsourcing the compliance element and being that gatekeep of assessing people's eligibility for the ESTA in the first place. So I think that will continue to change, and it's almost it's the blanket of having something. People think they've got an ESTA, they've got an ETA, it's therefore their permission to do as they wish, and it's controlling that really that will be a challenge in the years to come, I think.
Good, fantastic. That was fun. Thank you very much.